This day, this here now, and this gathering. This is our Tuesday together. Free, free, free.
Free, okay.
All right, blessings, namaste. Good to see you all.
Oh my God.
Sat Shree, I've been just chatting away with the delight of looking at you all. So, this is our 1 hour program, so relatively short, but we have an interesting topic that I think it's very relevant, certainly for us, since we have been through a period of troubles, including us getting COVID on our holiday. May you not have such holidays. But it is like come to the recognition that difficulties are the nature of things. The ability of being with difficulties is the art of living. I mean, that really what it gets down to. The art of living is not some sort of glorious keeping transcendent all the time. Art of living is how to be in life as it is. So I had a email come to me. It doesn't happen often. And by the way, these Tuesday programs, questions arise for you. Go ahead and send them to newdharma@gmail. And I'll bring them forward should it happen in the next Tuesday, where we're not intervening in the world, where I do a satsang. So I wanted to share a little about something who seems to have been going through some version of what Sat Shree and those of us who are in this work been going through this last year. And a number of things had to do with betrayal in a relationship, betrayal with a friend, betrayal with a client. And they were not knowing how to be with it. It's like, I must be cursed, and how can I be cursed because I love God so much, and why should this be happening to me? And hell, we call that an unrealistic expectation, but that's a prelude to what I'm going to read. I'm going to read my response to this person. Dear one, this is life. It's a play, often an unhappy one, disconnected from love and truth. These things tend to come because you are still in desire and hope for happiness in this dimension. But this is a setup for the kind of unhappiness you are currently experiencing. In fact, life comes in cycles, sattva, rajas, and tamas. When they come, we see and experience life through their lens. In sattva, we see the good and feel ease and optimistic. Rajas, in that lens, we see opportunity and feel like doing things that tend to end in overwhelm as we enter tamas. So it goes for all of us. Tamas is what makes things not worth it. We feel depressed, dissatisfied, lacking motivation, looking for someone or something to blame. It sounds like this is where you are, and it's just how it is in this dimension. It is important to do what you're doing now. Reach out, connect to the Sangha, and participate in my programs when you can. But ultimately, it comes down to having realistic expectations of life. What has happened to you is a normal part of human life. Sometimes good, other times not so much. This is really no way out, only through. The key is to be steady, to endure calmly, and to do whatever is the next thing required. But above all, keep up your daily spiritual practice. Get exercise. Eat healthy, but let go of any expectation, idealism, or hope. Sorry. You are a true spiritual being connected to truth and love. But you can only progress through meeting the lessons of life as a yogi, detached from any outcome, living aligned with a purpose greater than yourself. Have this be first, the rest will follow. Namaste. So there is a statement that can be the final languaging of how we mature as human and spiritual beings. Our capacity to live in life with all its difficulties, to find the right relationship, the right attitude, really is an attitude. It's not low expectations like depression, but it's a realistic recognition that this dimension will give and then take. It will be high and then it will be low. And that the determiner of those things, how long they stay or how much they affect our life, is how much we let these things overtake us. Where we create a story, where we use it as evidence for a decision we made when we were children or adolescents about who we were and what life is possible. So it's the attitude that allows us to develop the capacity to grow and mature as human and spiritual being. Now, I can tell you that anybody who's lived life, have met enough of its challenges, know what I'm talking about. It's not a happiness, it's not a sadness. It's just a willingness to meet what shows up. Sometimes, if you have the right attitude, it's a surprise. Oh, look at this. Instead of, oh my God, yeah, I've been lied to, or I've been betrayed, or whatever. When you can become curious about how life works and be looking to find its rules and structures in order to become more skillful, to have a more true and accurate relationship with what it means to be in this dimension. And we can't do it by running from life. We can't do it by using the spiritual path as a back door. We can't do it when there's still this quavering, this wavering, this I don't know if I want to do this doubting. It defeats our ability to get the fullness of what it means to be a human being in existence, and for all of you as awakened human beings. So how to live? You know, the 4 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? And how do I live? So the art of life, the art of living, is, like I always say, body surfing, right? It's just becoming skillful and riding the waves and taking advantage of those moments to see the trough, to meet the soil that's hidden under the ocean, or to fly above it all. So I took something from the next revelation of Gita, the 10th chapter, and I thought I would bring in this kind of universal context for the difficulties of the spiritual path, the difficulties of life. It's titled, "The Universe Awakens to Itself." There are 2 primal principles that form this creation, the Sat above and the Asat below. The Asat is the Sat, but is utterly lost in matter, ever striving to rise out of its condition. The Sat is always reaching down to reclaim its lost part. When we open to the universal forces, we become part of this process. The Asat striving to come out of its dimness, and the Sat descending to reclaim itself and lift us up as well. Forces above, forces below, work out through each of us when we awaken enough in our own unfolding, in our own individual evolution. The striving soul is the means by which this happens. This is what brings unique, powerful quality to experiences and revelations that arise at this stage of the journey. So, speaking of chapter 10, so far in the Gita, our awakening and merger with the Brahman have prepared and expanded our awareness so that the royal knowledge and royal secret of chapter 9 can now reveal themselves. But the real work starts when this new capacity turns to the Asat that is still hidden within. It enters more deeply into our system, into the depths of our body, what is still unconscious and hidden in our experiential emotional, and physical components. It's the nature of the path. It's how it works. When the Asat awakens, we are the Asat. When we awaken, we become the means for the universe to begin a process of transmutation to bring up the remaining Asat so it can be transmuted and made into the light itself, the Sat itself. So the real work starts when this new capacity turns to the Asat that is still hidden within. It enters more deeply into our system, into the depths of our body, what is still unconscious and hidden in our experiential, emotional, and physical components. This is what happens to you. This is what happens to you more slowly in life, but it happens to you more rapidly on the spiritual path because you're carrying something of the mission of the awakened Sat in you to transmute, to transform, to wake up to itself, to come into existence. It is the awakened Sat in us that allows the Asat to rise to the surface to be met and completed in the immediacy of each moment. Completed in the immediacy of each moment. So therefore, it's speaking to the fact that we're not to meet it to be overtaken. We're meeting to recognize it and to find the right relationship with it in order to complete it. And you can't do that for some of the things that arise from the depths of us. Rather, we have to develop a right relationship with how much and how to stay steady and endure the process of undoing whatever that piece of structure is within us. We're not going to know this right at first. When the Asat reveals itself, it's usually a shock. It's usually the beginning of difficulties. It's the next level of meeting what has been unmet in you and or in your relationship with existence. If you live in a small bubble, then only so much can happen from the objective world. It'll all be subjective. But if you live in a larger world where you're interacting with many people, then more opportunities will arise to meet the depths and the breadth of what is still yet hidden in your relationship with existence. A universal being is the outcome of this process. And that skillfulness is not a surviving, but rather a learning to swim and ride the waters of life. It is not just our individual hidden and unmet darkness, but the darkness linked to our ancestral karmas which flow through our lineage, that is unique stream of the collective error. I don't speak of it here, but once you complete enough of your ancestral karma, well, then you're going to work on the next layer, which is the collective ignorance. Outside of your individual stream, you'll be picking up the mood of the atmosphere of who is around you. You'll be picking up the energy of the place you're living. You'll pick up the energy of whatever circumstance you find yourself, or country, or part of the world. It'll become felt as if it's yours. Because now you're not just a human being. You're something else. You're an agency for the Sat. You are a manifestation, channel, and instrument for the Supreme. So maturing on the spiritual path, as long as you're in a body, as long as you're operating in this dimension, as long as there are, as always will be, the three gunas, it will always be difficulties. There will always be cycles. Thus, our awakening expands into these domains of the Asat, even while you expand upward towards the Sat. It is often two actions, rising up and expanding out. The rising up is the direct lineage to the return, the fulfillment. The expanding out is the inclusion, the oneness. If we take just the lineage, then it's the path of awareness, of nirvana. If we go the path of expanding out, it's the divine love, the Mahananda. The one that is the ocean that receives all the rivers but remains unchanged. It is often experienced as a dark night of the soul as you meet and traverse these collective qualities within yourself. It can be quite confusing, since you may have met some of these dark structures as part of your own individual human maturation. But Here they come again, and with greater intensity and depth, due to these universal structures of the Asat that are now striving to be seen, met, and completed. All of you who have been with me long enough are having moods and depressions, setbacks and delays, biological, emotional, mental turmoil, because you're joining me in a process of transmuting the vibrational frequency of the planet to whatever extent we're capable. Certainly, you cannot be vested in an outcome. Certainly, you can't expect happiness and peace and endless bliss. Rather, you have to find the right relationship. What in you grows in that process is a capacity to traverse territories you would have never traversed as a human being, and for most spiritual beings. I'm sorry, that's the path of the incarnation. That's the path that I bring. This is not Western psychology. This is not Western spirituality. This is a fundamental aligning with the organizing principles, the matrix of existence. Now, if you can just do the first part, if you could just find the relationship with the difficulties of life, the difficulties of the spiritual path, and just do that, and see how far you can get. What a better way to live a life than that? Because you'll know, you'll feel in the core of your soul that you're making progress. That somehow, no matter what, something growing stronger, something more masterful, something more real, something more true is growing in you. I've done this a long time. I am always surprised at what new difficulties may arise at any one time. And all the previous difficulties that I've been able to meet and complete to whatever extent I was able to have been useful in preparing me for meeting the difficulties that we've been going through. The core of betrayal is an error of expectation. You can only expect so much. The real nectar is within, not without. The right relationship with existence draws from that fount of our own being that knows its purpose and has learned enough mastery to align their life with that purpose. So now, I'm going to have Sachmahi read something from Sri Aurobindo's letters on yoga. Just when I was 19 and I saw a picture of Meher Baba and I recognized in the quality of his being a maturity and a wisdom and a love and a patience, and that became the guiding light for my life. So too, when I read Sri Aurobindo, I read a well-worn soul who has taken on the greatest of works, and his languaging enriches and confirms and supports my own ability to keep maturing in my relationship with existence. So I've read what I believe is his most intimate and exhaustive works on the nature of the spiritual path and the human condition. And this is the beginning of a portion which he titled The Difficulties on the Spiritual Path. So I thought I would experiment with bringing this forward. He writes in a very different way, so it takes some time to get used to the way his languaging. So I will be commenting on what he is revealing to try to make it more accessible. But for the most part, the depth, the breadth of his teachings are profound and effective. Because in these letters, he's writing to individuals. He's writing to people who've been with him 20 years, 30 years. He's dealing with them, dealing with the difficulties of these expanding arenas that happen as one matures more and more on the spiritual path. Okay, go ahead.
I want to start on page 3.
Okay, start on page 3.
On the second paragraph. I should take a look.
Actually, there's 14 pages.
Well, not today.
Oh. Just to let you
I
know.
would not do that. Okay.
All right.
The divine is there, but he does not ignore the conditions, the laws, the circumstances of nature. It is under these conditions that he does all his work in the world and in man, and consequently also in the sadhaka, the aspirant, even in the God-knower and God-lover. Even the saint and the sage continue to have difficulties and to be limited by their human nature.
I can't tell you how relieved I was when I read that verse, because it seemed like maybe there was something wrong with me, or something wrong with my teachings, or something wrong with my work. But he opened the door that I've revealed today in terms of the recognition that this is just how it is. It keeps expanding. The more you expand, the more you meet. And this is the inevitable consequence of a maturing spiritual path.
These ideas are only suggestions that always come up when you allow the sadness to grow up in you. Instead of indulging them, they should be immediately thrown from you. There is no why to your feeling of our farawayness and indifference, for these do not exist, and the feeling comes up automatically without any true reason, along with this wave of the wrong kind of consciousness. Whenever this comes up, you should be at once sure that it is a wrong turn and stop it and reject all its characteristic suggestions. It is when you have been able to do so for a long time that you have made great progress and developed a right consciousness and right ideas and the true psychic attitude.
So this rejection is a rejection of the addiction to dark nectar, the rejection to it's all shit. It's a rejection of the thought or the feeling or the mood. I'm not good enough. It won't happen to me. A rejection of the comparisons and the judgments and the evaluations. The rejections of those things that would take you off from your trajectory. Depression, sadness. You'll speak further of the different types of levels of difficulties, mental, vital, physical, each unique in their challenges. The nature of the rejection is because when we go with the mood, when we go with the pull of the suspicion or the idea or thing you heard that implies betrayal, you feed it. If you don't know to reject it, you become it. And that's how it works. And if you're a powerful spiritual being, you empower it through your attention and to make it a convincing reality for yourself, a more convincing reality than another human being when the mood passes. So the nature of the trap is that these subtle, undeveloped parts of ourselves pop up and show up in various ways along the spiritual journey. It could happen in a week. It can happen every month. It could happen every time, few times a year, where these cycles come up. And if you listen to them each time, you will make no progress. You will not make progress, no matter what you are in between. Because that was the measure, that was the door, that was the marker that you have to traverse before the next stage of your maturity occurs. That's just how it works. Okay.
So there is not a shred of reason for your going away. If you sincerely want to do yoga, and there can be no doubt about that, that is quite a sufficient reason for your being here. It does not matter about not having as yet any occult experiences, like rising of the Kundalini, etc. These come to some early, to some late, and there are besides different lines of such experiences for different natures. You should not hanker after these or get disappointed and despondent because they do not yet come. These things can be left to come of themselves when the consciousness is ready. But keep steady and don't indulge these ideas of incapacity and frustration and going away. They are stuff of Thomas and good only to be flung aside.
No greater wisdom than that wisdom. Staying steady is the art. When you have a path, and almost all of you are on the path, then that path becomes the path, your path. And that movement in that path, being steady, will take you to its completion. Because the path, of course, is not an outer structure, it's an inner structure. For me, the path of my teacher kept going because he challenged me in ways I had never been challenged as a human being. I was put in possible physical, psychological, and mental conditions in which I would have not ever taken on as a human being. So he put me through ordeal after ordeal after ordeal. And now as I look back, it's for those ordeals that I stayed. Because already in the course of life, I had learned something about the value of ordeals. So I stayed with him because it was difficult, not because it was easy. I stayed with it because I knew I was growing. I could feel inwardly a strengthening in a capacity that I hadn't seen before. Now, what allowed me to do that, in my case, was an ecstatic devotional nature. I had an ecstatic devotional nature. You can't tell, but that's my nature. It is the core of me. That gave me the strength to recognize that the ordeals were not the marker of truth, because I was drawing already naturally from that spontaneous ability to be in relationship, in that gratitude, in that awe, in that appreciation. I was a gift. I was born with it. The rest of my family, most of them were defeated, but I had the gift. And that gift is what allowed me to traverse it. And that gift lives in each of you to varying extent, especially those of you who have been with me for many years. It's a strength. It's a capacity that can only be recognized when you're challenged. So therefore, my whole life is challenge. There's no such thing as a vacation for me. It's an ordeal that I choose. It pleases Satchamayi, but that's not why I do it. The little dog, it pleases me to stop whatever I'm doing to play with him. He enjoys it. Do I enjoy it? It's just another expression of doing something that keeps pushing me, keeps reminding me that in that moment, there's an opportunity to let go and expand. In that moment, I stop doing what I would rather be doing and doing that. My life is full of it each single day. Unfortunately, I have a partner who gives me plenty of opportunities to keep getting off it. And that's the most precious and treasured part of my life. And therefore, that's why I'm with her. Just like I was with my teacher. Until I recognized that it was time, that I couldn't continue to progress spiritually under his field, under his umbrella, that I had to be naked, I had to be more vulnerable, I had to be here. It's probably the worst place to be a spiritual person with this mission. So that's the design, and that's the opportunity, and that is what I demonstrate and I teach and what I give you all opportunities to participate in. The 6 days, the 9 days, the India, being here in the residential community, meeting the moods that would normally run your life, but you're meeting them in this context, which is like, why am I doing this? Because I'm miserable here, and I was miserable there, so why here? Not recognizing that the ordeal is the marker. Sorry. If you want true happiness, you need to keep expanding your capacity to go beyond unhappiness. You can digest, you can learn to eat the poison. And that becomes a form of happiness. It becomes a sustaining nectar for something other than the human mental ideas, vital preferences, physical comforts. All right, we have something else?
Yes, there's more. You are not asked to do anything that you are incapable of. It is something that you have done already, and of which, therefore, you are capable. You are not asked to change your nature by your own effort, but only to stand back from these ideas and thoughts, refuse to indulge them, and remain quiet within, and allow the force you have repeatedly felt to change you. To repeat constantly, I am weak, I am unfit, I am bad, will lead you nowhere. Remind yourself always that the divine force is there, that you have felt it, and that even if you seem to lose consciousness of it for a time, or it seems something distant, still it is there and is sure to prevail. For those whom the force has touched and taken up belong thenceforth to the divine.
Well, really, there you have it. The opportunity to contemplate on what this means in your life would be how you take advantage of this revelation. If you could look back into the history of your life, and you can see your developmental stages when you're in the right perspective, and you can see where you grew and where you withdrew. And the nature of that teaches you in this moment what is the innate wisdom you already have to guide you for what's rising in this moment. See, the key is don't let the past shape the present. Stop making it the determiner of your future. Because in fact, all these things that you feel, that you think, that you experience come and go. They have no ability to determine this moment or the next unless you have allowed it, unless you have fed it. And that's why it's so hard to undo negative thoughts, undo negative moods, undo physical exhaustion and depression, because we feed it, we make it a story, we use it as evidence and justifying an ego that's based on the dark nectar. So stop. That's your path forward. The imperishable tree. Take the strong acts of dispassion and give up hoping or expecting something different. And then in that willingness to let go of any outcome, your sword cuts deep into the patterns of your own unwitting self-perpetuation of your difficulties, of your sorrows, of your rationalizations and justifications, of your positions and opinions. Let it always be new. And if new, let the newness be just this. It doesn't have to be static. It doesn't have to be good. It's just this. Whatever this is. And as I have told you all, feel this in your body without a story, without a belief, without a idea of getting better. Just experience. Oh, I don't know if I can trust this. Or does trust live in your body? No, it lives in your mind, or it lives in your emotions. But it also could be found in your body. So experience your body. What does it feel? Then you'll find the constriction. You can find the clench that you've been carried your whole life. You can feel the pain in your knee or your elbow. That's been evidence of that cost of doubt and distrust and suspicion. Your body is the wounded soldier. It's the one that carries the baggage of all your unwitting ill intents. So in the body, we can begin to say, okay, that's it. And watch what happens. Because you have a miraculous power in your awakened consciousness to dissolve these things in that moment. There's nothing that hasn't come to me that I haven't been able to enter into so far. May have taken time. For in the midst of the COVID, I had a temperature of 102. My body lost connection to me, to the will, to the mind. See, my body, I've lived such a disciplined life. My body almost doesn't know what to do without me. And when I wasn't there, it didn't know what to do, and it was going into chaos. And I recognized, this would be the moment of death. What's dying is the body, not me. And then at that moment, I saw something happening in my cellular structure in my body. I saw that something that my body couldn't produce came in and filled the gap. And that was the medication, the antiviral they gave me. It kicked in. And then I came out of it. So I was there in the intimacy, and that was the beginning of my recovery. And then from there, I crawled out of being that close. It was serious. I didn't know how to keep track of anything that was coming through my eyes or ears. I couldn't make sense of anything. The doctor were giving me complex instructions, and I was in isolation. Sachmayi wasn't there, and I was in a new place. I wasn't in my energy field. I was cut off from everything. I couldn't access my higher nature. I couldn't even do what I usually do, is evoke the Sat. I was so disconnected in that moment. I needed the body to do those things. So in that moment of disconnection, I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what not to do. And my body was both hungry and sick. So I would eat and then projectile vomit. It didn't know what to do. And I was there with all of it. I chose to inhabit my body again. I came back. And the body wasn't like I, the person, came back. I, the one who carries this mission, came back. I, the one who knows the nature of ordeals, came back. That guttural organization of my consciousness that knows that everything that arises has a purpose, came back. And that teaches me once again the nature of the opportunity of being in a human body, the importance of being able to be in this dimension as a conscious, awakened being aligned with a purpose greater than itself. So this is not theoretical. This is the real stuff. This is what the mother went through in her dying days when her body kept collapsing. She was able to meet what was in the human system that was not yet able to be eternal. And that process provided her a means to continue to live, because she knew she was making space for the Sat into the depths of the Asat that had not been penetrated before. I know that everything I've done has been on the shoulders of her and Sri Aurobindo's work. I know that this work is definitely a continuation of what they are doing. It didn't come clear to me. It took time for me to recognize what it was, to recognize its universal possibility for humanity. So when we talk about the difficulties of life, we're actually learning how to be, with our intelligence, with our psychic nature, in the right relationship with life. Because when we are, the inner resource, the truth of us, the fullness of what it means to be fully human and fully divine, becomes a font, a purposeful font that lives you and takes you. But it doesn't leave out the human like the aesthetics do. It doesn't leave out life like those who seek through the awareness, the absolute. Because the absolute only needs to be embodied It doesn't need for us to disappear in it. Okay. So I'll read this first part.
You're going to read the first part? Okay.
Yeah. All who enter the spiritual path have to face the difficulties and ordeals of the path, those which rise from their own nature, those which come in from outside. The difficulties in the nature always arise again and again till you overcome them. They must be faced with both strength and patience. But the vital part is prone to depression when ordeals and difficulties arise. This is not particular to you, but comes to all students, all sadhakas. It does not imply an unfitness for the sadhana or justify a sense of helplessness. You must train yourself to overcome this reaction of depression, calling in the mother's force to aid you. So this calling in the mother's force to aid you. Now for me, the sense of her always being here is well established, but for a long time, everything I was doing was for her. That I was doing it because she showed herself, and she was showing herself in what was arising when I was in India, and I was in the early stages of physically adapting to live in that country for as many years as I lived. It was for her that gave me the capacity to not be defeated or not to run away, to not use my free return home ticket that I had in the top drawer of my plain metal desk, plain metal chair, plain metal bed with a thin, moldy mattress. She was showing me something. But for us, we just can use it to whatever extent in our awareness or in our heart we have access to the divine, and remember to call it in. Remember to ask for help. Just like the person who sent me the email. They did the right thing by writing to me. It came up yesterday, last night, and it's here today. So this is how we participate with each other in affirming and clarifying the nature of the journey for ourselves by sharing it. Sharing it with others puts it outside of ourselves enough that we gain some authority over it, especially when they can hear you, can receive you. And that's our small groups. That's here in the community. You have many opportunities to be put back into remembrance by serving each other. And that's the way you can drink in the strength, even in the midst of the difficulties. You show up. Here in the residential program, you just keep showing up, no matter what your difficulties. And you're there in the atmosphere of the community, participating. When you have a role to play, you show up and play your role. Even when you're in any kind of state otherwise. You keep showing up and you discover none of those matter. This is all that matters. This is how we grow in our capacity to call in the strength that allows us to continue to expand and deepen our relationship with the Absolute and to broaden it into our relationship with existence. This is love. This is truth. Both fulfill. Now, here's another couple of extracts. These are all extracts. He didn't write these in order. I extracted out these pieces. So this is my commentary. Here he's talking about young people or immature people who are coming to the path. It may be generally that to be over anxious, it may be said generally that to be over anxious to pull people, especially very young people, into the sadhana is not wise. The sadhaka who comes to this yoga must have a real call. And even with the real call, the way is often difficult to know. But when one pulls people in a spirit of enthusiastic propagating, the danger is of lighting an imitative and unreal fire, not the true Agni, or else a short-lived fire which cannot last and is submerged by the uprush of the vital waves. This is especially so with young people who are plastic and easily caught hold of by ideas and communicated feelings not their own. Afterwards, the vital rises with its unsatisfied demands, and they get swung between two contrary forces or rapidly yield to the strong pull of the ordinary life in action and satisfaction of desire, which is the natural bent of adolescence. So we've all done this. I have people who have come to me after many different teachers, having gone through that young spiritual phase. It cannot last, but it will in itself mature one and prepare them for a greater capacity. And that will prepare them for a greater capacity. And then they begin to discover that the art of this spiritual journey is to stay steady and take in and meet the lessons without running. That is the path to developing maturity. Now they can run, and then they'll learn the lessons and get overcome by the inertia and the momentum of the past and the ancestral karma. Then they may or may not come out. If they do come out, they'll be wiser, and they regain the momentum to continue on the spiritual path. You could say that's all of us. We had periods of being pulled to spirit, and then it faded away because we got caught up in life. And then we got caught up in life and got depressed with life or disappointed with life, and then we got pulled to spirit again. And then we got overtaken by life, and then so we do it and repeat it and repeat it. And now here we are. Hopefully we'll be wiser. Hopefully we'll actually hear the good information and apply it to ourselves. But who knows? It's funny how it is. God gave us choice. You can choose heaven or choose hell. Go ahead, choose, and pay the consequences. So the nature of it is we have choice. And that choice, it's a gun that can shoot two ways. Get what you want, and you pay the price. So that's the nature of it. When you begin to learn that out there is not really where the juice lies, in here is where the juice lies, then the investment in getting what you need lightens up. And there can be enjoyment. There can be curiosity. There can be wonder without a claim. That's signs of maturity. There is no invariable rule of such suffering. It's not the soul that suffers. The self is calm and equal to all things. And the only sorrow of the psychic being is the sorrow of the resistance of the nature to the divine will, or the resistance of things and people to the call of the true, the good, and the beautiful. This is affected by suffering. What is affected by suffering is the vital nature and the body. So there is a suffering of the soul. It is to suffering that there's suffering. We suffer that there's suffering. We suffer that there's cruelty. There's suffer that there's injustice. We suffer of the inequalities. We suffer these in our psychic being, in our soul, as the recognition of those forces that are resisting the true, the love, the opportunity of the possibility of life. But the person making it personal, making it theirs, is burdening themselves prematurely with the suffering of the world, with the suffering that others, because of their behavior, create. You can't solve it through your own reaction or your own repulsion. You can't fix it, not from the consciousness that would fix something or to have it be different. It has to be a wiser, more steady, truer consciousness. And then actually gives it some space. Because ultimately, these laws, even the Supreme, have to obey. The law of karma, of consequences, cause and effect. These, the Supreme, is not going to violate, except through its transmission for those who can receive it, the incarnation force. And it only comes in those times because the natural law has lost its ability to hold. So it intervenes. And that's where we are now. That's why so many people are awakening on the planet now. But it's also why so many of these awakening souls are being defeated simultaneously. So there is this era of turmoil as the injection of the Sat force coming into the world is both showing the greater Asat, but also freeing up more of the Sat that's lost in the Asat. It's a price you pay. There's a price you pay on the spiritual path when there's a true accelerant. That means the difficulties are greater, the changes are faster, the ordeals are more challenging. The closer you are to that force, the more you have to develop your capacity to be resilient and get over yourself. You cannot pursue this if your ego is still laying claim. You have to have emptied of investment in personal opinions of preference or whatever, at least sufficient to keep expanding in your resiliencies. And where does this end up? We become useful to the world. We end up as being useful for the world. So for me, that's deeply moving. These are not just words. I invite you to invite that in, to be able to be truly useful, not just to play a little function, which we all end up playing, but in our consciousness, because the world will use it. It'll take us and put us there. It'll take us and put us here. It'll take us to that quadrant of the physical universe that needs to happen to make the shift, the next moving awakening of the Asat. And it gets down to, are you willing? If you are, the universe takes over. See, at first I did it for her. But then there was this tangible sense that she was with me. And now I know I am what she is. I am her. But I'm also him. I'm that. Can't really use him. But it is a being. It's a principle. And it's what speaks. And in this position, I am that. When I leave the room, it's with me. And when I'm in the course of life, then I'm doing everything for that without me making much effort. Because the only thing that I enjoy is challenge. The only thing I enjoy is the continued expansion. The only thing I just enjoy is the edge of the discomfort before it transitions. I eat the dark nectar. And for me, it's the light nectar now. But it becomes lived. And it's not something I do. It's what happens. And it's loving. And it's real. And it's authentic. It is what it appears in this moment. There may be a resistance in the mind, and the common form of that is denial or doubt, which may create mental and vital suffering. There may again be resistance in the vital nature, whose principal character is desire and attachment to the objects of desire. And if in this field is a conflict between the soul and the vital nature, between divine attraction and the pull of the ignorance, then obviously there may be much suffering of the mind and vital parts. The physical consciousness may also offer resistance, which is usually that of a fundamental inertia, an obscurity, a dullness in the very stuff of the physical, an incomprehension, an inability to respond to the higher consciousness, a habit of helplessness, responding to the lower mechanically, even when it does not want to do so. Both vital and physical suffering may be the consequence. Self-shaming is an example. Feeling yourself as the victim may be an example. And being depressed and being overcome and feeling defeated and hopeless, powerless, would be tamas, resistance in the physical. It's in the body. Gives you a clue where to look to defeat it, to dissolve it. There is, moreover, the resistance of the universal nature, which does not want the being to escape from the ignorance into the light. Yeah, Yoga Maya. She'll seduce you. She'll give you your crystal palace. She'll give you your transcendence, and you won't move. She'll have you, only to claim you again on whatever part of your nature is not yet fulfilled. Seductions or attack. That's how it comes up in the universal nature. Seducing you to a possibility, to something else, to another version of what is already there, to convince you to go after that. And that's a resistance. Don't leave. Let me give you something so you'll want to stay. So you'll want to keep playing a part. Because she needs sattvic people. She needs awakened people. So she's roping in people left and right. Most spiritual teachers are roped in by the Yoga Maya. And they play a wonderful and important part, because without sattva, Rajas and tamas would take over the whole thing. It goes on. This may take the form of a vehement insistence in the continuation of the old movements, waves of them thrown on the mind and vital and body, so that old ideas, impulses, desires, feelings, responses continue even after they are thrown out and rejected, and can return like an invading army from outside until the whole nature given to the divine refuses to admit them. This is a subjective form of the universal resistance. But it will also take an objective form: opposition, calamity, attack, persecution, misfortune, defamation of all kinds, adverse conditions and circumstances, pain, illness, assaults from men or forces. There too, the possibility of suffering is evident. There are two ways to meet all that. First, from the self: calm, equality, a spirit, a will, a mind, a vital, a physical consciousness that remains resolutely turned towards the divine and unshaken by all suggestion of doubt, desire, attachment, depression, sorrow, pain, inertia. This is possible when the inner being awakens, when one becomes conscious of the self, of the inner mind, the inner vital, the inner physical, where that can more easily attune itself to the divine will. He knows this. This is his experience. This is my experience. It's impossible to know what there is that's not yet to know, most of which is still veiled by the asat. So the nature of encountering all these situations is a requirement in the expansion of any true spiritual work. Not taking it personally, finding the right relationship with it, holding steady and having faith that there is an outcome. But in my case, I actually can know the outcome. I know the nature of ordeal. I know how long about they take. I know the challenge, and I know where it's leading to. The nature of that aids me terrifically in all these things, but it doesn't aid the people around me. It brings them all into the ordeal of the times, because objective calamity, objective challenges are very hard for the spiritual self to have enough authority to stand up to, enough strength to not be overtaken by. And that's the nature of this predicament. There's also the way of the psychic. When the psychic being comes out in its own inherent power, in consecration, adoration, love of the divine, self-giving, surrender, and imposes these on the mind, vital, and physical consciousness, and compels them to turn all their movements Godward. If the psychic is strong and masters throughout, then there is no or little subjective suffering, and the objective cannot either affect the soul or the other parts of the consciousness. The way is sunlit, and a great joy and sweetness are the note of the whole sadhana. When you know the delight of your own being, you have all the strength you need, whatever the universe will show you. And with that, I end this Tuesday. So let's just take a few moments. We'll sit in silence together. Just let that in. Make that true for yourself. Find a way to make it a guidepost for your life forward. Go into your heart, into your belly, into your diaphragm, into your body. Let your mind grow empty, spacious, present. Breathe. Feel the vibrational field that's with you right now. Let it in. Whatever flavor or shape it may take. No, it's the presence of the Supreme Being itself. Namaste. And with this, we complete. Love and blessings.